Oceania might be a fairly small continent, but that does not make it any less important for OpenGuessr and GeoGuessr. Not only does it have one of the biggest countries in the world, but it can also be quite difficult. And that is why this is the beginner's guide to Oceania. Let's get started. First, we need to understand what countries actually exist within Oceania. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, Google has made this easy for us. There are only two main countries in Oceania that we have to be concerned about, and that is Australia and New Zealand. Now, there is an exception. We'll get into that at the end. But unfortunately, Google has just not visited most of these Pacific islands, so we don't really have to worry about them. As a result, this video is basically just going to be telling Australia apart from New Zealand. First, let's discuss the similarities between the two countries. Both countries drive on the left side of the road. Both countries speak English. Both countries can use similar road lines, although there are a few differences we will get into. And depending on where you are in Australia, the vegetation can actually look quite similar. But this really only applies to the east coast of Australia and of course Tasmania, which can look very similar. All right, let's get to some of those differences. As you all know, there is an outback in Australia that does not exist in New Zealand. This is what a lot of the country looks like. In fact, you can see that most of the country doesn't even have coverage at all because it's a lot of desert and it's a lot of sand. There are also quite a few flat areas in Australia that don't really exist in New Zealand. You can also see some flat bits in New Zealand, but New Zealand is a very mountainous country, and even in the flat bits, you can usually see some mountains in the distance. The most recognizable plant in all of Australia is of course the eucalyptus tree, which you can find all over the place. You can still see some eucalyptus in New Zealand, but these ferns are really the unique thing that are all over New Zealand. This is because New Zealand has a favorable climate that's a little bit more wet than Australia. Now, for more rural areas, here are some really good clues. Starting here in Australia, we have the Australian bollard, which is perhaps one of the most iconic bollards in all of the game. As you can see, it is mostly white with that red reflector that's in the middle surrounded by the white. It's usually gray from the back. Now, New Zealand has a very similar looking bollard. As you can see, it is white with some red as well, but this time the red goes along the sides. A lot of times you'll notice it does not wrap fully around. There is this little white strip, but over here on this side of the road, you can see that it is a red band that goes from each side all the way around. Now, going back to this location in Australia, you'll notice that there are all white road lines here. In New Zealand, you will also see a lot of all white road lines, but it's also extremely common to see yellow in the middle in New Zealand as well, which is not found in Australia, which is a great key difference. Now we have a very urban route, and I can point out at least three very distinct things to New Zealand right here in this panorama. First of all, stemming from the last tip, we have some yellow dashed outer road lines, which are really only found in urban areas in New Zealand and not in Australia. Whenever there's a give way sign, New Zealand will also paint this white triangle onto the road just in front of it as well. This is not seen in Australia. And speaking of that giveaway sign, notice how the text is red. Well, here in Australia, notice how the giveaway text is black and there's no triangle painted on the ground. This is a huge difference if you're in an urban area. Now, there may be some city or regional exceptions to this, but typically in Australia, most of the street signs will be white, and in New Zealand, they are usually blue. As you can see from the map, highways in New Zealand feature a red emblem. If you're curious, the 2, 3, 4, and 5 are found on the North Island, and on the South Island, there is the 6, 7, and 8. Highway 1 is found on both islands. This is very helpful to know because on every single bridge in New Zealand, you will see this bridge marker that tells you what bridge it is and the road that you're currently on. Here we're on the 63, which means we have to be on the South Island. Here we have two speed limit signs from both countries. On the left, we have Australia, and on the right, we have New Zealand. Notice how the one on the left is a full rectangle that's not cut out, but New Zealand's on the right is cut out into a circle. This is a very common pole that you will see in New Zealand. As you can see, there is an indent in the middle with some holes. And a very important piece is this silver wrapping that you can see here that is to stop small animals from crawling up. Even on some of their other wooden poles that don't have an indent, you will see this band. Now, these bands are almost unique to New Zealand, as you might see them in Tasmania, although they are a little bit of a different color, as these are more of a dark green rather than silver. Now, unfortunately, as a country, Australia doesn't really have a unique pole. They commonly use this wooden one, but many states use their own unique pole. For example, in South Australia, you will see this Stobie pole, which has metal on the outside and concrete in the middle. This is a very unique pole to just South Australia. You can also find this unique pole in the Northern Territory. As you can see, there are some holes on the bottom and top of the pole with a middle section that is not holy. And this isn't exactly the best tip, but most concrete poles in Australia are found in Victoria. Just note that you can probably find them in every state, but they are most prevalent in Victoria. Now, I'm not sure if you guys can see very well, but I'm going to zoom in. There are some blue lines deep into the Indian Ocean. These are the Australian territories of the Cocos Keeling Islands and Christmas Island, both of which you might see while you're playing OpenGuessr, and they do have a lot of the typical Australian clues. However, there is a unique difference, and that is going to be the Google car. If you turn around and look down, you should be able to see the bed of a pickup truck. This was the only vehicle that was taken on Christmas Island, so if you see this, it could be a very good clue that you are there. This is the back of the Cocos car. As you can see, you can't really see that, but if you turn around and look at the front, you'll see someone's hand apparently, and also this thing right here, which looks like a bit of a snorkel, and that is unique to Cocos Island. So 2 unique cars to these 2 Australian territories. Finally, let's talk about the other places in Oceania. I have talked about this in a previous video, but there is one little coverage in the country of Vanuatu, making it the 3rd country of Oceania that is actually in the game as far as official Google coverage goes. The island of Ambrim has one little Google trekker that starts from the small lava lake and heads over here to the small city of Endu Pahakal. It is a tropical footpath that looks like this, and that is all that there is in Vanuatu, so there's really not much more to say. It would be very rare for you to see this location while playing. The only other location that's in the game in Oceania is actually going to be the American Samoa. No, not the sovereign country of Samoa, but if you look to the southeast, you will see the American Samoa. The main island of the American Samoa has a lot of coverage, including this small little island off the coast in the east, and if you look way off to the east, you might even see more islands called Manua, and yes, these are also a part of the American Samoa, and they do also have coverage. Every single island here in the American Samoa does have a unique car as well. The main one you get to be focused on is this black pickup truck. As you can see, it is a little bit rusty. This is the main one that you will see here in this US territory. But wait, what are those little blue dots doing way over there? Well, this is the Pitcairn Islands, and as you can see, there are 2 distinct islands that actually have Google coverage. If you go to the bigger one that has the label, it's just 2 little beach trekkers, and they look just like this. We are just walking along the beach. Chances are you won't see this in the game. But the other island is actually a civilization called Adamstown, and as you can see, the coverage is a bit more extensive. This is a trekker on this British territory, which is coined as one of the furthest places away from civilization that you can possibly get. And yeah, there are some houses here. There is some civilization. It's a cool place to look around. This is one of the most famous locations in the game. A group of people just arrived here in Pitcairn Island. A lot of YouTubers and pro players have made this location famous because they were able to instantly get it after learning it. And now you can do that too, because you know about the Pitcairn Islands. And that does it for Oceania. Hopefully Google actually does go and captures more coverage in these Pacific Island nations, because let's face it, it's a little bit lacking right now. We need some coverage out there. But that will do it for today's video. I hope you learned something new. Let me know if you want me to go in depth more in Australia or New Zealand. I can definitely do so. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.